Hello, and welcome back, everyone, to the Ground and Root podcast. I'm your host and holistic cancer dietitian, Dion Detrez. And this month, at the time of the release of this episode, we are focusing on what I consider to be one of the most important cancer prevention strategies we have, which is enhancing the function of our immune system and the surveillance of our immune system. Our primary defense against cancer, even though there's many reasons why cancer grows, as you know, if you've been following along here, our primary defense against cancer is really the immune system. And unfortunately, there are many things that can interfere with the function of our immune system. We discussed a lot of those in last week's episode. We're going to talk about some of them today from a slightly different angle. And when we think about a comprehensive prevention plan, optimizing immune function, optimizing immune surveillance really should be at the top of that plan. And thankfully, there's a lot of things we can do to help our immune system work better. So today we're going to talk about some of those things, but like I said, from a slightly different lens. One of my goals of this podcast is to not just teach what I know, but to also bring on experts from other disciplines who can help really broaden our understanding of what's possible with health and wellness and really open our eyes to all the different ways that all the different healing tools that we really have available to us. So today we have one such special guest joining us, Dr. Jennifer Ashby. Jennifer is a doctor of East Asian medicine. She is also a licensed clinical acupuncturist and herbalist, and one of my friends. I feel very fortunate to have met her. Gosh, I think maybe over a decade ago now, Jennifer. Does that seem correct? We both got hired at the same time at the University of California, San Francisco Osher Center, and just quickly became, friends. We were obviously like-minded, and we've been able to work together a lot over the years. So I feel so fortunate to have her here, and she's going to share more about the immune system, but really from how can we enhance it with this more sort of a broader lens of encompassing East Asian medicine as well. So Jennifer, welcome. So happy to have you here.
It's so good to see you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Yeah, seriously, thanks for having me. I'm a huge fan of your work. You know, I send you so many patients. My
I
patients
appreciate that.
love you. Your work is so important. Your focus is so important. So thank you for all of that.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I have been an acupuncturist for over 30 years. And I've been at UCSF Osher Center for Integrative Health for 12 now. And yeah, so it must have been 12 years
Yeah.
ago
Oh
that
my
you and I
gosh.
met.
So long.
And we lived near each other. We were very like-minded. We both had children. And yeah, became fast friends. In 2010, I went back and got a clinical doctorate in women's health. And prior to coming to UCSF, my focus was all things women's health related. And when I got to UCSF, there was the need for me to see a lot of oncology patients.
Mhm.
And so 12 years ago, I did a deep dive into translating East Asian medicine and everything we have to offer into the cancer arena. There were a lot of brilliant minds that came before me. And I took in their stuff and then did my kind of own translations, which have become I'm first author on a peer-reviewed Western medical journal paper from research that we did, because when I create research protocols in the field of East Asian medicine, I do it pragmatically, exactly how we practice, as opposed to just creating easy to use, reproducible protocols. They're
Mm.
actually individualized medicine. And so that's been recognized, which feels really good. I continue to have a million fabulous and kooky ideas about ways of validating what I do in a Western medical field without bastardizing what we do. And also, I'm super focused on creating jobs for people in institutions in my field when they're interested. So that's just a little bit about me.
I love that. I know we could talk a lot just about your background, but which is super fascinating. But I would love us to dive into this idea of the immune system, immune function, enhancing immune function, but really, like you said, trying to translate the world of East Asian medicine into something that people, the common person, will understand. So, where should we start in this conversation?
So I will take East Asian medicine concepts. I'll use the words that are foreign, and then
Mhm.
I translate them into Western medical terms, just understandable terms so that people can understand the
Perfect.
parallels that exist. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, well, where you help guide us.
Okay.
Where do we start in this
So
conversation? Yeah.
traditional Chinese medicine, which is now more commonly referred to as East Asian medicine because there's Japanese and there's Korean and there's other modalities, it doesn't talk about the immune system in the same way that Western medicine does, right? We're not talking about neutrophils and macrophages and antibodies and cytokines, but it has a very coherent parallel, not directly horizontally parallel, but relatably parallel mapping. So it talks about immune resilience and recovery and susceptibility to disease. And within this, we look at it from two major frameworks. The framework of what I'll cover, which is called Wei Chi. And
Mhm.
Wei Chi is like your acquired immune system. It's the one that reacts to opportunistic illnesses like colds and flus, builds antibodies. And then we have what's called this combination of what we call Yuan Qi, which I'll explain in a little bit, and Jing Qi, and the combination of those things, which are mostly inheritable from your parents, the health of your parents from conception and birth, and how, which is a little bit more related parallel to your innate immune system, right? The immune system that automatically exists within your body and helps to fight things and gobble up things like cancer cells. So again,
Okay.
like I said, they're not horizontally totally translational, but it helps with the concepts as we move along.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you think it would be more helpful to start with the kind of acquired immunity or the innate immunity?
I think
Where's
acquired,
okay.
because that's what people understand when people say, oh, my immune system's down. They're usually
Yeah.
talking about the one that's able to fight colds and flus. So we call this Wei Qi, and it's the body's trained responsive defense system. It's not learned in the same way that acquired is. It doesn't, in East Asian medicine, we don't believe that it maintains a memory, but it's similar in how we build it and maintain it. Find through mostly lifestyle, which is where you and I parallel and join so well. And then also Wei Chi is enhanced by how we handle our protection from exposure to the external world. So
Mm.
it's got some key characteristics, of course. We believe that it circulates in the body's exterior. So you know that we say that our skin and our mucous membranes are the first lines of defense for opportunistic illness in Western medicine. 4,000 years ago, they were talking about this in terms of Wei Qi, that it actually circulates in the space between your skin and your muscles,
Oh, wow.
which is also can be like fascia in your lymphatic
Yeah.
system, ironically, right? And that area they call the Li, right? So again, mucous membranes, skin, fascia, lymphatic system. And this space where the Wei Qi lives responds to external pathological pathogenic factors. So we believe that things like cold and wind and dampness and heat can actually penetrate the body from vulnerable places. The most vulnerable place you have to be exposed to pathogenic factors is actually the back of your neck. If you
Mm.
think about this in terms of 4,000 years ago, it makes perfect sense. It's windy, you catch a chill. So a lot of people, when they get sick first, they start feeling achy or headachy, or that ache starts in the upper
Hmm.
body. So a
Hmm.
lot of the translations, although they may sound primitive to some, are so logical when you figure out where their origins are. We believe that you can contract wind, cold, damp, heat, even dryness if you're overexposed to dry, deserty conditions. And then again, this is the ideas behind colds and flus and any other seasonal illnesses, and sometimes even allergies,
Hmm.
like environmental allergies. So how do we strengthen that? Well, one, if we're talking about exposure to external elements, when it's windy and cold or rainy, you want to protect your body from overexposure to the elements. It just makes sense. What does my husband, who's a Knowles guy, say? He says, there's no bad weather, just bad gear.
Yeah, like gear. Oh,
Yeah,
100%.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the same when you're going out, like you shouldn't go out when it's cold with wet hair like I have right now, right? You shouldn't, if
Mhm.
you're where it's really hot and the sun's beating down, you should protect your body with a hat. It's just so much of East Asian medicine is just logic. It's like common
Hmm.
sense logic. So that's one way of protecting yourself. But the other way is through lifestyle. And our lifestyle, all components of our lifestyle completely affect the strength of our Wei Qi. It's adaptive. It's an adaptive immunity. It's also adaptive to how your lifestyle is.
Mm.
So if you're underslept, overstressed, eating a highly inflammatory diet, dehydrated, you're just not going to have a good immune system. You don't have to have all of those things. You might have one of those things, but every component of lifestyle affects it. It doesn't mean that you need to be it's not about perfection in lifestyle because all effort counts in boosting our body's immunity, but you have to consider it when you're talking about boosting your Wei Chi or boosting your ability to fight illness. We believe that it regulates through sweating, like with pore opening and pore closing. You know how sometimes when you're sweating out a fever, like you feel like all your pores are open. And in East Asian
Hmm.
medicine, we describe that as like releasing the exterior heat toxin that came into your body. It's actually important. So we believe that when you take things to reduce the fever, if it's not too high, you're actually prolonging the disease's natural pathway of resolving itself.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So pores and how we keep the surface warm if we've got chills. So yeah, so the lifestyle can be consciously cultivated through diet and hydration and sleep and efficient breathing and movement and exercise and paying attention to your gut health and your bowel movements and
Yeah.
then managing stress.
Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh.
so the clinical
Yeah.
parallels are there.
I love this.
And
I also love the idea, if you don't mind me just stepping in for
no,
a second. I
please.
love the idea of the sort of external elements influencing us too, right? Because I know you're also obviously, I mean, I think anybody who's an acupuncturist or East Asian medicine practitioner or even Ayurvedic practitioner, I think it's more top of mind, this idea of living in harmony with the outside weather, what's actually happening
Mhm.
outside, right? And so we just entered spring. And so thinking about the elements of spring and how oftentimes people can get sick in the spring. I mean, not just with allergies, but because there's so much, there can be such an extreme between right, like some winter temperatures and energies, but and then the summer energy and trying to balance that. I mean, to me makes sense, but I could see how for some people that may just not have ever really been on their radar as, except for maybe something their grandmother told them to do, but not that actually influence the immune system, right?
Correct. So I have a way that I explain it when I'm teaching medical students.
Mhm.
So in Western medicine, a human's body is the macrocosm that's considered in focusing on health. And then the components of DNA and your cells, neurotransmitters, anything biochemical within your body is the microcosm. So your body's
Mhm.
the macrocosm and the components of you are the microcosm. In East Asian medicine, it's the opposite. Your body is the microcosm, and everything that you come into contact with in your life is the macrocosm. The idea that the external world does not affect our physical, emotional, and spiritual health is ludicrous. So,
Mhm.
cause and effect is a huge engine behind all of the theories of East Asian medicine. So, East Asian medicine's focus is literally homeostasis or balanced physiology. And we have this unique way of diagnosing how a human becomes out of balance, and we all do. And then we
Yeah.
have a unique set of skills to rebalance the body. So if we can all agree that a body, when given the opportunity, and if it can, which is often the challenge in oncology through oncology treatment, if we can agree that a body will return to a state of homeostasis if it can, given the opportunity, you completely understand the theories of East Asian medicine.
I love that. I have to tell you a little story. I knew nothing about, I don't know when your first exposure to East Asian medicine or acupuncture was, but for me, I knew nothing of this when I was younger. And then in my 20s, I actually started having hormonal stuff. And so I started working with an acupuncturist, and it was like my first experience in this world. And I still remember, which now makes sense to me, but at the time didn't. I was like 21, 20, I don't know, I was young, right? And I still remember that first appointment. And he was this Chinese medicine doctor, thick accent, almost really difficult to understand, but I was doing my best. And he was talking to me about like how I was dressed, right? And what I was wearing, and that you're not protecting your kidneys, and there's too much exposure here, and you should not be wearing this, and you should be wearing that. And I just remember being like, what? Like, so,
Judgmental old
right?
man.
So confused. I mean, now it makes sense to me, but that was like my first introduction to this idea of, and I know you're going to talk about the kidneys too in a minute, but that it's actually important to protect yourself from wind or from
Yeah.
coolness, right?
Exposure. But first off, kudos to you for going to an East Asian medicine practitioner at 21 years old.
Yeah.
People ask me a lot, who's your favorite audience? And I say 6-year-olds. They're like
Mm,
6-year-olds. And I'm like, if I could start teaching people cause and effect of lifestyle and slow death or chronic illness,
yeah.
everybody would be out of a job, right? So good for you for going at the age of 21. So there are some specific ways. Is this a good time to jump
Yeah, of
into the
course. Yeah,
teaching
wherever you're feeling called. Yeah.
Okay. So there are ways in which I'm not just going to leave it at this amorphous lifestyle, right? So
Hmm.
in East Asian medicine, there are very specific organs, and we look at the organs not exactly the same as the Western medicine function of the organs, but we have East Asian medicine's theories of the functions and the energetics of the organ. And so I'll be speaking from that platform. But there are specific organs related that we boost when we're trying to boost the Wei Chi, right? Your acquired or defensive immune system. And so I kind of want to go over those and how the listeners would pay attention to those from this
Perfect.
perspective. So the governing organs for Wei Chi are first the lungs. So in East Asian medicine, the lungs are responsible for the skin,
Mm.
not just the lung organs themselves. They govern the skin, which, as we said, is that first line of defense. Also, mucous membranes of the nose. And then also, we focus on the spleen. So, to your expertise, there's a notion of something called the school of the spleen and the stomach, and we're going to go through that in detail. And although they didn't explain it in terms of the gut microbiome, they described it that a healthy gut creates a healthy person,
Hmm.
period. Bar none. You don't have a healthy gut, you don't have a healthy person. So we'll go over the fact that the spleen, which is a very important organ in East Asian medicine, regulates this source chi that boosts our immunity. And we'll see that both in the innate and in this acquired immune system of ours. And then the last is our kidneys. If we are born with the completed kidney, what we call chi or energy, we will always be catching up with our immune function because it
Hmm.
is the source of life. The lungs are our immune center commander, if you think of it that way. Not only does it help create Wei Qi, but it distributes it in this coolie area to protect our entire body. So when it's strong, our defensive protective devices are strong as well. And it controls our respiration and the opening and closing of our pores, which has as much to do with protection as it does in diagnoses. So if you have a soccer game and you end at night and it's getting cold and the fog's coming in like it does here in San Francisco, and your pores are opening while you're sweating and you're exposed to this cold, damp environment, you are actually reducing your Wei Qi. And if you do it repeatedly, you are exposing yourself to the elements of getting sick every time. So it's pores opening and closing, not just in terms of what happens when you have a fever or you have chills, but also how you exposed yourself to the elements we had just discussed. So, as a first line of defense, what do we see if that lung chi is weak? We have somebody who's getting frequent colds, frequent flus, weak voice, shortness of breath, spontaneous sweating, even without exercise, and somebody who suffers things like allergies, like environmental allergies, or even asthma.
Mm.
Chronic asthma depletes the lungs, and
Hmm.
therefore you struggle more with not getting illnesses. And since East Asian medicine believes that the lungs govern the skin and body and hair, and this is where those pathogens first attack, right? The wind, the cold,
Hmm.
the heat, the dampness. So that's the lungs component in terms of Wei Qi development. And then the spleen, as I said, the school of the spleen and stomach, which is becoming more and more important the longer that I practice. Because again, I believe that gut microbiome it's the beginning and the end of it all. You can't get better with a poor gut microbiome.
Hmm.
So the spleen being so if the lung is the immune commander, The spleen is the immune factory, and I'm going to explain what it's a
Mm,
factory of. It is responsible for transforming food into energy that we then use to build our immune system. And we call this transformation of food into energy, we call it Gu Chi, like Gucci.
cute.
And that is, yeah. So the spleen is responsible for extrapolating the essence of everything we put in our mouth to giving us a healthy gut microbiome and a strong immune system, which I know
That's
that
cool.
you're inside going, yay, yay, yay.
Yeah.
So
No,
this,
I appreciate the other angle too, though, right? Because yes, we might speak to it as making sure you're eating the food, the ingredients that your immune system needs to stay strong. But I like this concept too of how it's moving through the spleen to help that happen.
yeah. So we don't talk about the spleen much in
Right.
Western medicine,
No.
right? And it's taken out if it's a problem. And when it's
Right.
taken out, East Asian medicine practitioners are like, ah. And so it's producing the raw materials, like taking the essence from the raw materials of your food and hydration, right? Hydration has a part to do with this too, how we transform our fluids. And it turns it into what we call the quality of our chi in blood, which we'll find are both acquired and innate immune system components. So the spleen is incredibly important in East Asian medicine. And when the spleen is weak, we see frequent illnesses, a lot of fatigue, especially after eating,
Mm.
bloating, gas, belching, loose stools. And then somebody who, when it's extreme, will have lots of phlegm production. They just look
Mm.
like a damp, phlegmy person, and a lot of allergies with a lot of during expectorating of fluids. So that
I'm
is the,
laughing because I'm thinking spoken like an acupuncturist to say they look like a damp, phlegmy person. I can
right.
imagine all these acupuncturists, walking down the street and sort of identifying people
We
based on.
we we do. Somebody, a friend of mine, once said to me, "You need to go on TikTok." And when everybody had there was the thing of sticking your tongue out with pictures.
Mhm.
Goes, "You need to diagnose all these famous people, just
Based
like."
on their tongue. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's got, and I bet she suffers, and
Oh,
he's
that's
got, and
funny.
I still might do it during a lull in my life at some point.
Yeah,
But anyway,
that's funny.
so again, East Asian medicine believes you cannot have a strong immunity without strong digestion. It's just an impossibility. And then there's the kidneys. The kidneys are the spark of life. The kidneys are everything that it is the foundation of every single part of life and health in East Asian medicine. You can't escape talking about overall health and well-being without incorporating the kidneys into the talk. And people don't really think of their kidneys in terms of immunity and overall general health, and we can't exclude them from overall immunity and general
Hmm.
health. So we call the kidneys your immune battery. They're the spark, the fire of life that keeps us strong and vital. And they store something that is really important to us that we call Jing,
Mm.
Jing, Jing Qi, and it is the essence of life. Now, it is your constitutional strength. It is your genetics, but not only your genetics. It has jobs, right? It's responsible for our growth and development and our age and how our body goes into the last chapters of declining chi, predetermined. And this essence, this Jing Qi, is finite. When we use it up, we all die, every single one of us. And the twist to all of this is that you can use it for everyday living, but it's finite. You should not leave it to its jobs, growth and development, and age and decline, right?
Mhm.
Expected healthy decline. If you use it to get through a Wednesday, we do tap into it at times in life when it's appropriate to use it, childbirth and recovery from serious illness and surgeries. And in emergencies, that burst of superhuman energy to get through immune emergencies. But if we're tapping into it on the daily, right? If we're tired in the middle of the afternoon, when we are pushing through physically, emotionally, or spiritually, that energy, that push through energy comes from somewhere. It's the big issue I have when Adderall is prescribed to get people going through cancer treatment. Now they get to choose quality over quantity. People get to choose, but I want them to choose I want that to be an educated decision. Caffeine is the same. If you're using caffeine to poop or to get through the day, that's not real energy.
Mm-hmm.
You've lost your feedback mechanism, so you know if you're pushing through or not. So Jing Qi is finite and it has jobs. And if we're using it to push through, if we're pushing through energy on the daily, or if we're responding to inconveniences in the same way a saber-toothed tiger is chasing us, an inconvenient email, a daily chronic stressor should not be responded to with the same stress hormones, cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine. We are depleting our Jing Qi. And when we chronically deplete our Jing Qi, something's going to break. Autoimmune disorders, when our innate immune system is no longer strong enough to help gobble up the cancer cells. I actually believe with today's modern society that we all have cancer cells inside of us. And it's when our immunity becomes weaker than the source of the cancer cells that cancer thrives. So this kidney immune battery is essential not to preserve because you can't replenish it totally. You can try to stop the leak, but you can't regain what you've already lost. And that's another reason why 6-year-olds are my best to just understand. So they're your constitutional strength, they're your genetics, and we can tap into them at times, but we shouldn't be pushing through every day, because when we do understand that you're depleting the only battery you got.
I feel
So
like this is really important, Jennifer, because I feel every single person I work with or speak to who's, either facing cancer currently or has in their past. I mean, I can't speak to everybody, but I feel like this is like a common thread. I mean, how often are people really pushing through just because
yeah.
of their crazy
And
loads,
cancer
right?
treatment would be an appropriate push through time, right? You can't
Sure.
rebuild your energy when you're, having to go through really strong treatments that just
Hmm.
knock you out. But within that system, I think let me rephrase. Within that system, I think one of the hardest things is for people to be living in a way where life feels recognizable and rewarding. And so for some, there's a tendency to continue to push through to do that. And the answer to honoring your daily battery level and still living a life that feels recognizable and rewarding is it's different for every patient, every person going through this, not only through treatment, but like stepping into survivorship. It gets so
Yes.
complicated, right?
Yes.
So within that arena, this takes on a whole different conversation than it would for a college student or a mother of
Yeah.
several children or whatever. They're different conversations, but it still has the same foundation of like
Yeah.
so what I teach is I teach this thing called the Epic Eight, and it's using 8 lifestyle competencies to have a toolbox to be able to boost your daily energy, your daily chi, so that you don't dip into this essence, this kidney essence, unconsciously. And that you learn how to use your physical, your emotional, and your spiritual energy as a gauge to whether you're doing these 8 things right. And if you are pushing through, you then have a toolbox to look and say, how did I eat today? What did I eat? When did I eat? How did I hydrate? What was I
Hmm.
drinking? How was my sleep? So you have things that all on your own that you feel that you're more in power of the way that you feel because you have a toolbox to check in with on the daily. I totally digressed, Dion. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
But
No,
yeah,
not at all. I
but
think
the
that's
prenatal and
important.
postnatal they're the foundation of everything I teach.
Yeah, and I think that to your point too about like how obviously it's going to be a bit different whether you're moving through something as stressful and tedious as a cancer journey versus working on or just being in prevention and trying to stay cancer free. I feel like just like a general education, public
Yeah.
health messaging. You know what I mean? Just general health and wellness, not pushing through and not tapping into this battery when on a daily, like when you don't need to. That feels huge. That feels like such a take home message right there.
Huge take home. And then the other thing is, in terms of just speaking to everyone from all socioeconomic backgrounds, the notion of having the privilege to be able to make that choice does not resonate with everybody in every
Mm,
situation. And my messaging to that is that all effort does count. If what you can do in the face of that, if you're working 3 jobs, you're trying to get through cancer treatment, your children are home and hungry, if what you can do is drink enough water so
mhm,
that concentrations of too many toxins are not building up in your body and you're aiding your digestion, oh my God, that's a lot. I can't
mhm.
tell you how many patients come back to me and say, my energy is increased so much just because I'm hydrating properly. And I teach them all the tricks of how to hydrate when you're in chemotherapy and you got neuropathy in your mouth and you're sensitive to everything. And so when I say all effort counts, I'm like, find the thing you can do and do
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
It's not that you have to be perfect in all eight.
Yeah.
So the kidneys are very important.
Yes, they are. They
And
are.
when somebody's kidneys are weak, you do have chronic infections, you have poor recoveries, you have autoimmune patterns, and fatigue that just doesn't improve with rest or dietary changes or hydration or constitutionally appropriate movement. Right. I remember you might have even been speaking at this. We were in the the Integrative Oncology Symposium that Dr.
Mhm.
Anand put on. And
Oh
there was
yeah.
there,
Yeah,
you remember that was
I
years
do.
ago.
Yeah.
There was an oncologist there an integrative oncologist, and Dr. Natalie Marshall. And I was talking about preserving your Jing Chi while you're like going through treatment. And she comes on and said, you all have to move 150 minutes a week. And I messaged her and I was like, okay, and she's a competitive weightlifter.
Okay.
And I was like, you and I just told everybody exact opposites
Opposite.
of that huge issue with what you just said. Explain to me. And we weren't saying different things. We just had different language. Everybody has to move 150 minutes a week, but she's not telling people going through chemotherapy to go to Zumba class.
Mm,
She's saying that if walking to the bathroom gets your heart rate up, whatever it is that gets your heart rate up, you still have to move. And by
mhm.
not moving, you're adding to a multitude of burdens in your body and adding to deconditioning, which is not going to lead you to a better outcome. So, anyway, again, I digress. So, autoimmune
That's good.
disorders and fatigue that doesn't improve with rest, and just learning how to listen to that need to rest and also get movement in. So, Wei Chi, okay, is nourished by the health of our lungs, how well we digest our daily food and our food choices. And those two things, and actually everything else we do, are all rooted in our kidney essence, the strength of our kidney chi, or what we call our kidney jing, that fire of spark of life. And a lot of that is inherited. And so if you know that there's certain genetics in your family that aren't great, it's a little bit more important to pay attention to these things. But in doing all of these things, in paying attention to how we navigate all of our lifestyle choices, we are also either upregulating bad genes or down regulating bad genes that we might
Mhm.
have a susceptibility to, or we're regulating or down regulating good healthy genes.
Yeah.
So that's just Wei Chi.
Yeah.
That's just
That's a
our
lot.
fired, yeah, responsive energy.
So when we think about, I wanted to also just sort of bridge this in the idea of, things that could be impacting immune function versus like how we enhance it. So when we think about these three systems that you just described, the lung, the spleen, and the kidney, it sounds like, I mean, it could be either or, right? If they're depleted, that could be decreasing immune function. And then it would also maybe be the opposite of like how we restore is by boosting those three organs, correct?
Exactly. So for the lungs, boosting would be utilizing them.
Mm,
And in different ways. So I teach 10 different kinds of breathing that all have for different outcomes what it's going to affect. There's 3 for decreasing stress, but different ways. There's the one for sleep. There's the one for lung health and immunity. But did you read the book Breath by James Nestor?
no, but I have heard of
Oh,
it.
you
I
have
haven't
to
read
read
it.
it.
Okay, I
Oh,
will.
it's in my lifetime top 5.
Okay.
Most modern humans are incredibly inefficient breathers. And breath is really good that it teaches us how we kind of got here. So it's like this biographical anthropological, sociological, medical, research oriented, experiential book on just freaking breathing. And it's fabulous. It's so well written. So we're really inefficient breathers. And when we're talking about our lung health, so this defense, this first line of defense, this coolie, the health and strength of our lungs is very important. And the way we do that is through having a breathwork practice and exercising, right? Zone 2 exercise, which gets our lungs working and our heart working harder so that we're oxygenating our blood, are essential. So in terms of lung qi, and also not smoking, not vaping, not doing the injurious, obvious stuff. But another interesting component, and especially for those going through oncology journeys, the lungs, so every organ has emotions that it houses and is responsible for. And the lungs house depression, sadness, grief, and sorrow.
Yeah.
So when people are going through something difficult, people often they sigh, and that's the lungs like request for expansion to help us process that difficult emotion. So when it comes to the lungs, it's use and not doing obviously injurious things. Often in cancer treatment, we have a level of anemia, which gives us shortness of breath. And through all those things, it's really important to make sure that you're expanding your lungs as much as possible. The spleen is all about food choice, but its emotion is over worry, being overly pensive, chronically worrying, right? Also a really big challenge in the oncology journey.
Yeah.
So again, the way to strengthen it beyond developing coping mechanisms that you'd never thought of before in your life when you can is that your food choices are going to make a really big difference. And in East Asian medicine, we're all about easy digestion, aiding our digestion. So we're all about slow cooked foods. We love crock pots, we love, we don't like instant oatmeal. We want you to cook that stuff for 40 minutes, right? We love kanjis and things that have a grain base, and then everything else. We're not talking about boiling things to death or having things necessarily bland, but it's just cooking them. We believe that raw foods take more energy to digest than they do the energy that they give back. So if you're a person that eats a lot of raw salads all the time, you're actually at a chi or energy depleted state, because you have to warm it up and then break it down, and often the return. So we believe in all those veg, but you steam them or you blanch them or you saute them, just warm them up at least to body temperature so that they're easy and easier to digest. My morning breakfast is a bed of dark leafy greens, a couple of tablespoons of kimchi, and a couple hard-boiled eggs. And I leave all of that out till it's room temperature before I'll eat it, right? Because I don't want to overtax my spleen. Okay. And then the kidneys, preservation and restoration is really just not pushing through every day. It's preserving what you can. Fear and phobias are what reside in the kidneys. And that's a really big challenge in a cancer journey. So what I find is it's not about saying, don't be fearful, don't be afraid of, like scanxiety and stuff is not the thing that's going to totally deplete it. But when you have those moments, let it move through your body and get on to the next thing. I always say that, and this was brought home so much for me when I went to Africa a few years ago on safari, that not a single animal stays in a state of stress once the stressor is gone. The stress comes, they have the appropriate stress hormone shot through them to help try to save their lives. And then when it's not there, they're just grazing and swatting at flies, right? And so I thought about that in terms of how heightened we just hold stress in our body. And again, none of this is a statement about not having stress. With it is 2026. We all have a lot of stress, but it's choosing what is deserving of the embodiment of stress and what is not. So keeping the perspectives. If you're stressed out about upcoming scans, you're stressed out about what's coming up in treatment, that is an appropriate response. But when you have some answers, when the scans have come back, like whatever it is, to the best of your ability, work on tools to not continuously be releasing those stress hormones because those will deplete your kidneys.
Yeah.
Easier said than done. But that's like the ultimate super happy goal.
I mean, we do speak to this too of getting stuck in these emotional feedback loops, right? Where we're worried about something or fearful about something or stressed about something, and we just kind of keep replaying it, even though that's not necessarily changing the situation or changing how we respond to it. We just get stuck. And so,
Yeah.
learning tools to help you get out of that loop can be really helpful.
Yeah, vulnerability is where I think it all comes down to. I think the cancer journey is the ultimate state of vulnerability. And
Yeah.
I think that there are processes that I have found that, Brene Brown's work on vulnerability, I think is really good, that the fear of what might be happening does not
Hmm.
save us from the effect of what might happen. And also Byron Katie's work about being able to deconstruct the stories we tell ourselves as a means to just help reduce the burden of it all,
Yeah.
I think can be really helpful for some people. And that all that the kind of work helps preserve kidney chi.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that thinking of it too from that holistic lens of the emotional elements that are also impacting those organs.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
So the beauty of Chinese medicine to me, one of the things that attracted it to me when I was in my 20s and was like riding motorcycles through Baja and had no plan for doing anything with my life yet. I was going to be a political speech writer because it was the Reagan era and I was like,
Yeah.
was the notion that a human being, our holy trinity for a human being in this medicine is your physical person, your emotional person, and your spiritual person. And
Mhm.
there is nothing that identifies separateness of those three components of self, that a whole person is a whole person. So you would never think of tonifying someone's spleen chi without dealing with the emotional and the spiritual components that come into spleen: over worrying, over pensive, or another thing that comes into spleen chi is overworking, overstudying, like an
Mm.
imbalance between the intellect and the physical components of your body. You're ignoring what your body needs because you're hyper focused on
Mhm.
something intellectual or that takes brain power. So, whatever it is, we have all these tools to balance the person. If I'm dealing with anxiety, I'm not just dealing with the symptoms of anxiety, I'm dealing with the root of where that all comes
Mhm.
from. So now this will be a little bit shorter. Is it a good time to go through innate?
Sure. Yeah.
So innate immunity is what we call Yuan Qi mixed with that Jing kidney Qi, right? These are deep rooted source Qis that we have when we are born. And these combine to create something with the Wei Chi called Zheng Qi, Zheng. And these are deeper substances that represents the body's constitution. They are always present. They have non-specific resistance, like in fighting internal pathogen forces like cancer or other components of chronic disease, autoimmune
Mhm.
conditions. This innate immune system does not require prior exposure or learning of the illness. And so this Zheng which is the product, is what we call our upright or our correct Qi because it is so strong, it addresses everything. It's part of Wei
Mm.
Qi and it's part of this innate immune system, Yuan source Qi. It's always on. It's always ready to defend our body. The classical principles applies here that when your upright chi is present within,
Mhm.
pathogenic factors cannot invade or take over. And lifestyle can really affect, even if you have genetic predisposition, lifestyle can really, again, upregulating or downregulating our genes. We can't change our DNA, but we can affect when they turn on and off to a great degree. This is the East Asian medicine equivalent of this innate immune system's
Mhm.
constant balance of our body. And this yin and yuan qi, this nutritive qi, combines with the zheng qi. And these create these deep insides in terms of nourishing and defending your tissues from the inside of your body. It takes that food essence that we generated and extrapolated via the spleen and stomach, and it puts it into an immune defense response. Part of that energy goes into your innate immune response and defense of your body. It mirrors the innate immune system's deep tissue surveillance, I think is the best way to do it. So when atypical cells arise, it goes into attack. If anything breaches or anything becomes rogue, any internal pathogens like autoimmune disorders of the gut, this is the defensive component that tries to go in and heal it before it takes over. Think of Crohn's and diverticulitis and IBS. I've never known an IBS case without somebody who literally swallows their emotions, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And then we can think of the Jing essence of the innate immune system more like your deepest constitutional substrate, right? That is stored in the kidneys. It governs the body's inherited immune blueprint, as we discussed. It is our constitutional immune capacity from a very deep level that we are all born with. And we, as I said, we sustain it through lifestyle. I teach that through that thing called the Epic Eight, right? Those, I say, medical literacy and lifestyle competency. And as our Jing essence naturally declines in midlife, that innate surveillance often weakens. And if you can add to that how we've lived our life and what our exposures have been, not only to how we ate, consumption of alcohol, living life with joy and the balance of stress, all of those things affect that innate surveillance system and weaken it. It doesn't mean you're bad or you're wrong. It's just the natural way of life. We map this a lot, and I map this a lot in terms of perimenopause and menopause as well, but lifestyle affects it all. Yeah, so again, with innate immune system, your kidney chi is the root of it all, and your spleen chi generates to help keep that energy flowing into your innate immune system, which gobbles up rogue stuff within inside your
Yeah.
body. So I'll just summarize these
Yeah.
two concepts quickly. So the air you breathe and how you breathe it, right, from your lungs, and the food that you eat and how well hydrated you remain. The lungs governed by the air governed by the lungs helps that air descend into the body. Your food and your water are transformed by the spleen. The air chi or energy we call Qing chi, and the spleen that transforms food and water we call gu qi or green qi. And those come together. And remember, we're translating this from a 4,000-year-old system.
Yeah.
Those come together into what we call pectoral qi. Think of your stomach and your lungs, like they weren't really talking about your muscles, but in the area of the pectorals. And then if you think about that vital essence, that kidney chi over here on the side that's inherited from your parents, that comes down and is mobilized and turns into that Yuan or that source chi. So that pectoral chi and that source Yuan, primordial source Yuan chi combine to create something that we call Zheng Qi. And those split into two separate paths, your defensive Wei Chi, and which is your adaptive immunity, and then your nutritive Ying Qi, that primordial Qi of your innate immunity.
That's awesome. So yeah,
Yeah.
so really, I like the way you described that at the end too, just because you can visualize, particularly for any of you who are watching this on YouTube, then you're actually seeing her do it with her hands, which might be helpful instead of just listening. But yeah, but we're still, whether we're working on adaptive or innate, it's sort of the same principles that we're trying to nourish and rebalance to support both.
Yep.
Correct? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we do that best through these lifestyle pieces. And I made sure to take some notes so I could put them in the show notes too. I mean, just, so that's kind of summarized for people, but the concept of some of the primary ways we support the lungs, we support the spleen, we support the kidneys so that it's top of mind for you, as obviously we can dive much deeper, but it's a good places to start.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Is there anything else you feel like it would be important to share before we wrap up?
I mean, I think that just knowing that your choices to the best of your ability affect your body's defenses, both acquired and innate, and that doing whatever you can, the best you can in whatever stage you're at is enough. But to know that there are tools that help your body do and enhance its innate wisdom to get us through whatever journey you're facing is in there. And just know that your participation with it is essentially important to not only your emotional and your spiritual experience, but your physical experience while you're in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love the reminder too of just, you don't have to be doing all of it for it to be helping you, right? That
Mhm.
reminder with the water, with the hydration, it's can you pick with whatever's true for you right now, knowing that it might shift down the road and you may be able to add more and more things, but whatever's the one thing that feels the easiest entry point is going to make a difference, right? It's
Mhm.
going to start to shift. And
Right.
that's really what we're looking for.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
like, I talk about a lot about hum breathing as a
Mhm.
way of reducing that sudden acute anxiety around so many things that come up in the oncology journey. And like the resonance of hum breathing affects your vagus nerve and calls forth your parasympathetic nervous system as a means to help bring that resonance down so that you're not constantly producing those stress hormones that affect your kidneys. And so
Mhm.
tiny little techniques. Do you know hum breathing?
Oh yeah, I do it almost
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah, me too.
I notice actually sometimes I notice when I'm stressed, even in the grocery store, like there's too many people
Mhm.
around me or something, all of a sudden I'll be humming to myself and not even realize it until later be like, okay, it's just like self-regulating there. There's like too much chaos.
How many of us had elders in our life, particularly women, who hummed through their day? They hummed
Yeah.
while they were cooking, they hummed when they
Yeah.
were outside, they're humming and humming. And I realized that it is self-regulation.
Yeah.
That's another thing I want to teach 6-year-olds, right?
Oh my
It's
gosh.
just let's tell our body that we can actually go into rest and digest. And that rest and digest state, as much as you're capable, it doesn't mean that when you're out of it, you're doing a ton of damage. It means that when you're capable and you can go into it, and you're telling your body you're safe. Because we
Mhm.
don't go into rest and digest when the saber-toothed tiger is chasing us. So it's a really difficult time in life to really figure out when you can do it and when you can't. And you only know because everybody's journey is so individual when you try. I can
Yeah.
get a hold of this one. I can't get a hold of that one. But when I get home, I'll get a hold of it again. Like all that effort
Yeah.
counts.
Yeah. I love that. And I would say too, just a reminder that we're also not going to heal when we're not in a rest and digest state, right? Fight or flight is not a healing state. So when it's a survival state, a short-term survival state. But yeah, I like to think like so typically when I teach about nervous system regulation, it's like we need to have more moments in our day, even if it can't be the whole day, more moments in our day where we're in that rest, digest, heal
Yes,
space so
yes.
that we can make
Yeah.
progress, right? We can move forward in this
It
journey.
sounds insulting to some people that maybe have been just diagnosed and stuff. Like, what a pipe dream.
Mm,
But I deeply understand that notion. If you're
mm,
not doing it, you're not failing. But my
mhm.
encouragement is to keep trying because
Yeah,
it's the continued trying that will eventually help train yourself when you are capable of going into it.
yeah, yes, 100%. I think that feels like a good place to end. But I also want to make sure, and again, I will put this in the show notes as well, but that people know how to connect with you. You have a book coming out this fall that's going to be teaching more about the Epic Eight. Do you want to take a minute to talk about that? And then we'll have you back on to talk about the
Sure,
book.
sure. I was giving a talk on menopause and was incredibly tired after a long clinic day and realized I was giving a talk on menopause to the most resource group of women in the world and thought to myself, okay, what am I doing? And just gave my talk. And at the end, a woman came up and said, you should write a book. And I was so tired and so punchy. I said, why? You want to be my editor? And she said, I actually think I might. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Hi, I'm Jennifer. So a year and a half later, there is a book coming out called The Energy Prescription, which you've all just learned about. The Energy Prescription, Ancient Wisdom and Modern Science for Thriving Through Menopause. The irony is that It is very parallel to constitutionally what people are going through post-treatment and into sort
Mm,
of and in between treatments.
mm.
So it's actually really applicable to this audience. And it comes out October 19th. And I'm
Exciting.
incredibly excited.
As you should be. It's great. I mean, it's going to be such a gift to the world. So we will definitely make sure to have you back on in October just to remind everybody that this is out now. But certainly, yes, learning more about these Epic 8 lifestyle tools that is going to work across. This is what I really think is beautiful too. And we touch on this quite a bit in the podcast is like, you don't need 20 different plans for all the different diseases or things that could happen to you. Do you know what I mean? It's really like getting back to the basic pieces, the basic tools that are going to actually keep you healthy through all the things. So, what is applicable for menopause is also going to help you stay healthy and hopefully reduce your risk for cancer, right? So, I think, yeah, it's all relevant, it's all
It's
applicable.
all relevant. Yep. And I always say, in this world of quick fixes and biohacking and
Yeah,
longevity, this, and I'm like, if you don't have your basic lifestyle skills at least partially mastered, don't waste your time and money. And they're usually all you need. Like, how many things can't be regulated through proper nutrition based on what you're facing? Like,
right.
not
With
only what
with
you
a
eat,
little
but
hum
how you eat
breathing, with a little
and hum
humming thrown
breathing
in. Yeah,
and water. That's it.
water and some sleep and
And
some
sleep.
sun, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm all about going back to, especially in this world of technology that's taking us further and further away
Yeah,
from just our inability to recognize our body's own innate wisdom as to what it needs, right? I think that
yeah.
going back to basics is more and more important. I appreciate you so much, Jan, and all
Oh,
your work. I mean,
thank you,
seriously,
Jennifer.
having you as a grounding peer and just pushing through against a system that is not always super pro what we do. You've been a grounding force for me. So thank
Thank
you.
you. I appreciate that. I really
Yeah,
do. And we need our people that we
me
can
too.
that we can lean on and refer to and work through this crazy world with.
Me too.
You are definitely one of them for me.
You're definitely one of them for me too.
Good. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you found this conversation enlightening. Like I said, I'll put some of the information in the show notes, certainly how you can connect with Jennifer too, her website, her Instagram, her upcoming book, all the things. And if just a quick reminder, I know I do this every time, but I feel like we're still such a new podcast that if you love what we're sharing here, please help us spread the word. Your help will get it into the ears of more people, which is like all I can hope for, that we can spread this message far and wide. So I so appreciate you. And I will see you again on a future episode. Bye for now.
Great. Thanks.